Which sweeper types or combinations are the most effective? Paula Kalinowski at the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency took a closer look at this question at the Enhanced Street Sweeping 101 workshop on May 30th, 2024. This is a recording of her short presentation brought to you by the Clean Sweep program, which is a partnership between the University of Minnesota Water Resources Center, the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, Minnesota Sea Grant, and the Minnesota Stormwater Research Council.
So which sweeper types and combos are the most effective? I'm going to also lean on our expert a little bit here. But we have, I think just 3 basic types of sweepers. The mechanical broom sweepers, really, again, it's kind of like it says, it's the brooms that are doing the work. The brooms are pushing the material into hopper, I guess. That's the main, process. Again, some of these have a little more, might have a few other bells and whistles, like the dust control, where you can have the water spray. So that gets used particularly at construction sites a lot of times, because there is, a lot of fine sediment, and you don't want to be kicking up dust with your brooms. And then regenerative air sweepers, they actually have a air jet that blows onto the road to loosen things up, and then it vacuums it up. That can be really good for getting things out of cracks and those kinds of spaces, but it can also if it doesn't do a great job of pulling that material back in, then maybe you're kind of spreading some of those fines. And we wrote vacuum assist, but I think what we wanted to say was vacuum, or I'm going to let Jeff, what's the difference? Or James from.
So a true vacuum assist is going to have a mechanical broom, like a main broom, like you see in the lower left corner. But it's going to have a vacuum curtain system that goes over that, so you get the best of the large debris and fine particulates.
Yeah. So you're pulling in the large stuff with the broom, and as that's all getting kind of
like a standard vac sweeper, like Timco in the bottom center, you got your gutter brooms or your side brooms that funnel everything to a vacuum only. Where if you have a vacuum assist, you're going to have a mechanical broom, cylindrical broom that's lifting, and then it's lifting it up into the vacuum, onto a conveyor system, into the hub.
That makes sense to people? Okay. Thank you, because I was not clear on that distinction. And I'm glad you pointed that out to me. So those are the basic kinds, and just based on that description, again, you can probably get a sense of when you would want to use particular sweepers, and what pollutants they would be best at putting up. I did really put this on here. So again, mechanical broom, those high trash areas, wet material, it's the only one that I've seen rated high for picking up wet leaves, wet organics, wet material in general. But of course, if you need to be getting those sands and silts and clays, it's not necessarily going to get that, especially if it's kind of compacted into like the road topography. That's where maybe something like a regenerative air or vacuum material loosen it up and also be suctioning it into the hopper. The mechanical brooms are the least expensive. I know that the cost for sweepers, like everything else, has gone up quite a bit. MnDOT had a survey of these sweeper types from 2007, so very outdated, and I did a little bit of a inflation calculation there to give a range maybe of what we might expect today, and it sounds kind of like what I've heard in the past couple of years, but that may already be outdated. Tandem sweeping, which isn't showing up all that well here, can be really effective in the spring, also in the fall, like I said, where you do have a significant amount of coarse material, but also those fines, and the street might look clean after your broom goes through, but there's still a lot of the fine material on the street. And just remember that looking clean doesn't always mean there isn't stuff on the street that is actually washing into your storm sewer, right? I guess the other thing that I want to mention here is just the operation of the sweeper. I don't have a slide on this, but I know where I live in Prescott, Wisconsin, And the street sweeper came by this spring, and they actually own it now. I see they had one that had Prescott, Wisconsin on it. I think that's a relatively new development, that they own their own, and they did a really great job. You know, they came through, they swept slowly. They went around the block 2 or 3 times, and it was really well cleaned. The previous year, somebody kind of blew through, they had a pass, and we just, still had, and Prescott uses sand in the winter because we have very hilly there. And just sand all over the gutter line still. And then, there are older streets you go by, you can see all kinds of things take root in the gutter, and, you've got vegetation growing, and then cracks start, opening up on your pavement surface. So, not talking about it here, but all of these have optimal operation. You want to make sure that you're going an appropriate speed, so that you're actually able to pick up the material that's there and adjust that speed. I don't drive a sweeper. I don't really know all the different controls that you might, have to play with, but I think when we're outside later, maybe James will be able to tell us more about particular types, bells and whistles, operational considerations.
If you would like more information on enhanced street sweeping or are looking for tools and resources to implement this in your own communities, please visit us on our website or contact us at one of the email addresses on the screen. Thanks and happy sweeping.